All right, how about this, Dust? What player would you like to talk about now? Do you want to do the dupreeh one? Do you want to do the glaive one? Which way do you want to go now, mate? Your choice.
Yeah, the glaive one I think is the most interesting because I feel like, again, I don't know if anything's decided yet or not, so it might be too late, but I think he's the one that probably has the most options of anyone as far as like where he can fit in. Because obviously he could stay with Astralis, he could try to help them rebuild, but that would pin what other talent could Astralis recruit around him to make it worth his while, unless they're just going to pay him a fat load of cash and that be his incentive to stay. But I mean, you could do so much with this guy as far as like where you could fit in. Like imagine this guy going over to Complexity to be an in-game leader or something, letting BlameF just be a player. You take out JKS and Rush, you bring in Mages and Glaive, and what do you have there all of a sudden, right? That could be very interesting. You could also put him in a G2 type situation. I think he'd be brilliant for like what they need as far as bringing in more tactics to build around the talent that they have. So I feel like you could go a bunch of directions with that guy as far as like what value he could bring to a bunch of different teams and just lift them up not only on a tactical level but give them like another type of entry type player to help facilitate other talent on the team from a role perspective. So I mean, I think he's like got to be the hottest commodity out of that whole bunch as far as like how rare it is to have a truly great IGL that can also contribute in the fragging department, can speak English, can play on international teams, and that's what a lot of teams lack right now, is like a true IGL. Like a lot of teams are basically based upon IGLs who weren't classic tacticians, but basically just took on the role out of necessity. Like a Nexon G2, for instance, throughout his entire career, it's been more of a necessity than I think something that naturally was his thing. And you could say the same thing about a lot of different teams out there. So yeah, I think that he could be massive for basically any organization that, gets him on their roster.
What do you think, Pim?
I think he could be massive for where I think he's going to end up, which is in Astralis rebuild the whole project. I think that's a shame, right? Because I agree with you, Dust. I think like the opportunity of getting Glaive to your lineup, whether you're G2, Complexity, Fnatic for that matter, who's going to a big rebuild,
Fnatic would be huge too. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's a perfect one. Yeah,
there's plenty of options, right? And there's plenty of money, I guess, for Glaive to cash in on if he really wants to, if that's within his line of thoughts. But by what I know, from behind the scenes and what I sense is that Glaive is probably going to stay and he's going to be part of this rebuild within Astralis. And I think that's the best thing Astralis could ever hope for. I don't know how they lured him into it. I don't know what they gave him in terms of a contract, in terms of sustainability and maybe comfort. One thing you have to understand as well, Glaive, he's about to be married, or he's already married. I'm not too sure. Yeah. He's engaged, right? He's having a child as well coming. So the whole, going through a new chapter in his life, right? You don't want to have a work environment where you don't really know where you're going, where you don't have any sustainability. You may go to G2, but let's be honest, do you really want to go to a team like G2 where you don't know what the fuck is going to happen within 6 months? That's could be potentially a bit of a mess. You're standing there with a wife, you're standing there with a kid. So I think if you're Glaive, you're evaluating your options. You're thinking, okay, I have a kid coming, I have a wife coming, I have a very, very comfortable life here in Copenhagen within Astralis. They want to give me even more money and they want to make me rebuild their project, right? There's a lot of motivational factors in that as well, because as I said with Sonic, if Glaive can rebuild Astralis, he can make another major winning team out of Bubsky, Lucky, or whoever else who's being rumored to Astralis, not even tier 1, tier 2 talent within Denmark. That would be freaking outstanding, right? Worst case scenario, he still has a long contract with Astralis. He's still getting paid shit ton of money. He's still set for life and he still has that comfortable living, with his new wife, with his new kid. So I agree, from a pure competition standpoint, I would absolutely fucking love to see Glaive within G2. I would love to see him take some random team, Complexity, Fnatic, whatever, go somewhere out and explore it. But I understand him from a personal point of view, and it makes sense to me if he were to stay within Astralis on a long-term contract.
No, I 100% agree with everything that you just said. I think that the only question that I have then, if we're going along that line of logic, which I think is pretty flawless, is what the fuck can you recruit around this guy to make Astralis still good? Like, let's forget about Glaive's personal situation and like what motivates him and like all the pros of basically staying with Astralis. If you're Astralis, you need to keep Glaive. If you're really losing Zonic and you've already lost Device and you're potentially losing other star players, like if you don't hold on to Glaive, then like what do you have? You have nothing. So it's absolutely imperative that Astralis finds a way to keep Glaive if they want to maintain presence in the top CSGO space. But if I'm Glaive, unless it really is just about the stability, the finances, the comfort and all that good stuff, like Astralis has to be coming to this guy with proposals on like talent that they can acquire. And so unless they're somehow going to hijack Valda from OG, or they're somehow going to get some like players from Heroic coming over or something like that, Pimp, you might as well fucking dust your mouse off, because like you might be one of the best recruiting options that they have at this point. That isn't like some young unproven player from one of the lower tier teams. So
but that's the risk Astralis is running as well, right? Because if you're getting a Glaive on, let's say, a long-term contract, could be 2 or 3 years, right? And you don't have those plans in front of you, and he's thinking, he's going to do it anyway because he's getting the stability, he's getting the money, he's getting the long-term contract. You may end up with a Glaive that is not motivated, right? And I've played with Glaive for 2 or 3 years, and a Glaive that is motivated, he's the smartest mind in Counter-Strike I've ever seen, I've ever played with, and he can take any fucking team and he can make them at the very least, a top 10 team, even if he's only getting, tier 2, tier 3 talents within Denmark. You don't even need a Valda. You just need, some young kids who wants to buy into the project, wants to put in a lot of hours, and I have fully faith in Glaive being 100% focused and 100% motivated with the backing of Astralis. They'll still be a top 10 team. They'll still occasionally be in a playoff. They'll still occasionally be annoying to the Navis, the Gambits, or whatever the teams are going to be called in the future of the Worlds. But you're right, but if you end up with a Glaive that is not getting those plans proposed, and he's not satisfied with getting in a Lucky from Tricked or getting in whatever the fuck they're called from the Astralis talent team, yada, right? You end up with a Glaive that is on a 3-year contract. He's no longer motivated, and he won't be doing a good job for you. He'll be fine. He'll be decent. They'll be a top 15 team. But is that enough for you, right? So you gotta find a way if you're Astralis, and that's the big puzzle I guess they have to figure out. One, securing Glaive, that's well done, but you gotta find something that can motivate him outside the money, outside the sustainability. Because Glaive, not motivated, we saw it even 6 years ago, 7 years ago, he retired. He didn't want to play. He didn't touch Counter-Strike, as in he didn't touch Counter-Strike at all. He didn't even play for fun for a year and a half. Then he got the motivation back. Then he found a new project, he found it fun again, and he got on to be the best in-game leader that Counter-Strike has ever seen, right? So if you're Astralis, I agree. Not only do you have to find players that motivate him, but you got to find a sort of a vision for him, right? You got to say, this is your team, Glaive. We are 100% backing it on you. And if that's not enough to motivate you, don't sign this contract, right? I hope those conversations have been had. Otherwise, you end up in a lose-lose, both for Astralis and for Glaive.
Sure. The thing is, though, I definitely agree with you, Pim. I think personally, what motivates him is his literal personal life situation at the moment. Again, he's sort of just entering the period that Zonic was in, I think 4 years ago, something where he's starting the family and all that stuff. Basically, add in these factors. One, he is someone who has literally had multiple injuries in his career. He's had the lung collapse and all sorts of things. He's the guy. Remember, people forget this. Dude, he was the one who took the break, not Device, even though Device is the one who has ongoing issues. Device kept playing the whole time. So that even implied to me, by the way, when I saw that move happen and I heard some of the things behind the scenes, I thought to myself, fuck, I hope the guy doesn't just straight retire. That was probably an option in his mind at some point in mind. Maybe thought about it. You ride out one last year. That's another reason why this is an example of where, even though it's the best thing for Astralis, you keep him, because I definitely agree with that. For me, the top 3 people you had to keep was, in this order, Device, Glaive, Zonic, and you already lost 1, potentially 2 of the 3. You've got to at least keep 1 to keep some vision that you're going to be a great team, right? But the problem is this, that could actually end up being a deal that fucks you. If you give him what he wants, 3 years, great contract, we'll put players on you, we'll give you Hunden so he gets you the next talents. Listen, that sounds great, but the problem is, if there's a next year, he just decides these players aren't actually that good anymore, and you know what, I've got a nice lifestyle, and they're a good team, but as you say, we're a top 10 team sometimes, and we have good runs occasionally, and what do you want me to do? These are new players. That's the problem. It's you haven't really got Glaive at that point in time, have you? You just got a guy who's just sort of being Glaive 60% of the time or something. And that's the reason why a general rule in Counter-Strike is, it's why people who either go into massive slumps for years or straight retire, it's the reason they don't tend to come back. It's not that they couldn't, but whatever reasons made you sort of fall out of love with playing the game, you're probably not going to just fall in love with it again. You might think you do. You might want the money again. You might have all these good reasons to, or 2 days out of the week you might feel like it. But that is different from being a hardcore, every day, trying to be the champion. And he's done that for a long time as well. People forget they've been in that team for fucking 5 years now or something. Maybe 4.5 or something. That's a long period of time. I wouldn't blame anyone, by the way, who retired after how long Glaive's played. He played in Source as well, for fuck's sake. He's actually had an insanely long career. I think, to me, the interesting angle on this is, I would say this, if I was saying to Glaive, I'd say, listen, mate, unless you tell me all that stuff personally, and that's why you're doing it. If you think this is at all the competitive move, you are out your fucking mind, and look, just enjoy the money. But with that said, if I had to do it, the one possible solution to what we were saying, who do you get? Well, to be fair, if they do indeed get Hunden as their coach, mate, has anyone in the history of Counter-Strike gone out into just a random crowd of people, pulled 4 people off and made them all pro players more times than Hunden? This guy is ridiculous. If people don't know, Glaive's already himself played with Hunden. In fact, there's a team, if you want to look it up, this is pure banter, because this is why Hunden must be such a good IGL, but he must also make other people think, I could do that. Because they had this team pimp, this Copenhagen Wolves lineup, and I'll tell you the lineup. Are you ready? So it was Hunden, the IGL. It was Glaive. You're all thinking, you just said Hunden. Yeah, Glaive wasn't the IGL. And then he had Snappy. That's another IGL for it. No, he was just a player. And then they had Percy. Isn't he an IGL for a lot of it? Yeah, he is, but he wasn't at the time. And then they had SMF, who's just a super old school fucking source player that played with them all. But like, this is ridiculous.
Terrible lineup.
Dude, that's like you should just recruit MSL and make it the fucking all IGL team at that point in time. What even is this? Are they all that meme of like, like I made this? Like, it's like I'm the IGL. Like I'm the IGL now. Like, what the fuck is this shit? Like, what, you all just think you can IGL? Like, this is ridiculous. So I will say he's obviously worked with them in the past, so I'm pretty sure he knows how smart he is about the game. And as I said, mate, that's got to be the ultimate guy to get talent. Like, I would put it this way, I don't know if there are other talents out there, but I would trust he's the one to find them if there are. Look at how many times he's done it. And I'll even throw this in. A lot of people had their questions, could he do it at tier 1? Because obviously until Mad Lions, he was basically demanded he kept playing. Now, once he became coach, obviously he left Mad Lions basically immediately, right? He became the heroic coach. This is what people forget. Go and look. And as cynical as it sounds, heroic's period is number 1. And as an elite team with the old lineup, the one before Shush, etc., it literally lasts until like a month after Hunden was banned. Now, if people don't know, I have a principle called like the IGL hangover, where I think like if you kick your IGL tomorrow, it's not like everyone has to delete the strats out their brain. You can still do them. So as a result, you might still be good for another month or something. You might be good for like another 2 tournaments. I'm pretty sure coaching, the same thing applies, whatever they helped you with. So to me, then you look at his drop-off, it's literally the time he was banned. And then when he comes back, yeah, they did a roster move. By the way, he probably also had some say in that. It was his old players. But then you look, mate, they immediately became one of the best again. Like, this guy's track record is really impressive, I have to say. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.